Hi, I'm here with some friends from the Runnymede Trust to talk about their project, Our Migration Story. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. So I'm Sundeep, Lidher. I'm the co-lead on Our Migration Story. I'm a historian and I'm working on a postdoc at the moment on the history of the restaurant trade on Brick Lane.
And I'm Malachi McIntosh. I worked as co-lead with Sundeep on Our Migration Story, and I'm currently the editor and publishing director of Wasafiri magazine.
You're very accomplished people. I was just wondering if you could tell us a bit about what Our Migration Story is and how it works.
Sure. So Our Migration Story is a website. It's sort of an online hub on the history of migration to Britain. It starts in the Roman period and it goes all the way through to the present day, and it just charts the various people, objects and ideas that have travelled to Britain over 2,000 years. So that's the website. It's a collaboration between the Runnymede Trust and the universities of Cambridge and Manchester, and the PIs are Professor Claire Alexander and Professor Joya Chatterjee. And it's also the recipient of 3 awards. So the website has won an award for community integration. It also won the Royal Historical Society Award for Best Public History Resource online. And also it's a winner of a Guardian University Award for Research Impact.
And I suppose as to how it works, it's composed of a series of case studies that span the time period that Sundeep mentioned, all written by historians and designed to be relatively modular. So anyone interested in that history, our main audience we think of as school teachers and their pupils, but we know many people use the website. So anyone interested in a particular historical period or a particular historical story can click in. All of the case studies on the website include links for further reading, they include questions for further thought, but by and large they tell the story of an individual or a community that migrated to Britain within a particular period in time, contextualized around a historical source, and structured in such a way that they offer an introduction that you can then follow up on.
And how can people use the resource?
So the resource is free and it's online, and it was designed to be accessible to anybody who's interested. So you simply go on www.ourmigrationstory.org.uk and you click on it, and it's sort of divided into 4 historical periods, and all of our case studies are kind of divided chronologically. And it's very easy to kind of click onto those and learn about the particular migration that you're interested in. And as Malachi said, you can also follow some of the links if you're interested in delving deeper into a particular topic. And we also have an entire section on teaching resources. So if you're a teacher and you want some kind of classroom ready downloadable resources, there's also a separate section on the website for that. So that's how you can use it.
And how did you guys work with both historians and teachers to put this resource together?
Well, it began actually with a desire to create this one-stop shop. So there are lots of resources online created by various different projects based out of universities and through independent community historians, sort of about migration histories, but there wasn't, at that time, there sort of had been, but it had gone away, any way of centralizing all of those bits and pieces. So the goal was to meet with various different, at the very beginning, meet with the various individuals who had created these other websites, meet with historians with specialisms in the periods, trying to make sure that we present a full narrative of migration to Britain. So it required getting in touch with some folks who we didn't necessarily have connections with and discussing with them, what they thought would be the best things to put on the site. If we wanted to create a resource where any teacher, any young person who wanted to know about migration to Britain could go, what stories, what should we include? And Sundeep led a series of workshops around those topics and then sort of took it from there to develop the site.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I would say the consultation period at the very beginning of the project was crucial in kind of helping us frame and structure what this thing would be. So I guess our brief was create this online hub that would be useful to teachers and the general public. But then it was a process of kind of figuring out what would be useful. So the very first meeting was with our advisory board, and that involved kind of retired teachers, textbook writers, exam boards, people who had already worked on resources before, kind of brainstorming together around what would be useful, what exists already, what could we do? And then we hosted a series of kind of consultations with historians. So 4 separate roundtable events where we kind of solicited ideas and heard from historians about what they think the most important sort of migration story from their research would be if they're trying to kind of interest a 15-year-old in the work that they've been doing in the course of their career. So the consultation period initially was really important.
One thing about this resource, maybe one thing about public history generally, is that it was an iterative process. So we did effectively a first draft of the website, which came out of those initial consultations. But then we noted areas where we maybe needed a few more resources or looked a bit thinner than others. And Sundeep reached out to further historians. And while that was happening, to sort of fill in those gaps, and while that was happening, we started sharing the resource with school teachers who themselves asked for a little bit more of this or less of this, did some surveying as well. The Section 4 teachers sort of grows out of that initial response, people saying that they wanted teaching resources, telling us specifically the kind of teaching resources that they wanted, and then contacting teachers themselves to create those resources. So it sort of came from the bottom up, as it were, rather than us saying would be useful in your classroom. So there's a constant process, as long as we were able to, as long as we had the funding, of going to historians, going to teachers, saying, is this good enough? What can we tweak? What can we adjust?
And I would say also the actual sort of the case studies themselves, so the kind of text and what they look like, that was also kind of a co-production process, so where we kind of worked with our historian contributors to kind of refine those and to help them sort of translate their work in a way that would be useful for school teachers and for children in schools. So that was also a kind of back and forth process, which I learnt a great deal from, but I think it was really productive.
It's such a rich project, and you can tell how many hands, how many voices are really a part of it as you explore the pages and explore the resources. And I was just wondering, as you developed it and you launched it and you came away from it, what was your sense of the value of working in that co-productive way? You've already touched on some of this, but we're talking this week on the MOOC about co-production as a public history strategy. And what do you think is the value of working in a co-productive way?
In my eyes, and with this project in particular, it just couldn't have happened otherwise. There was no single individual, be they a university academic, a school teacher, a community historian, who had the knowledge to put this entire thing together. So telling this long story of migration, again from the Roman period, as close to the present as we could. The last case study is about Theresa May's Go Home van campaign. There's not an individual in Britain, in the world, who could tell that story in all of its richness and all the detail that we needed for it to be useful in the classroom by themselves. Similarly, because of the huge amount of work that's been done in this area by all sorts of people connected to the project, again, including school teachers, it would have been absurd to just try to start from scratch with it. So by tapping into that existing knowledge and that existing experience, we hope, and the feedback has been positive and the awards are helpful, that we've created something that's richer than any other technique. Simply getting historians together to create a thing for school teachers and throwing it at school teachers, or even just going to the people who've done it in the past and talking to them, all would have produced, I think, a product that was less robust than the one that we have.
Yeah. And I would say just so expertise. I mean, we were really able, so the goodwill of everybody involved really made it happen. And without that, this would not have been possible. But I think we were really looking to create something that was really robust. So something that was historically rigorous, something that was based on sort of cutting edge research. And we just wouldn't have been able to do that ourselves, or as Malachi said, with just one or two historians. So the expertise was as important, but also I would say maybe the role of Runnymede has also been crucial in this whole process as a kind of middle space that facilitates these connections between different bodies, and Runnymede as an organisation, I guess, is connected with various academics and schools, and we were able to build on some of those networks. But to have Runnymede and to have funding that paid the both of us to work on this project was crucial to kind of connect all of those people. And I would say also in the dissemination process, the kind of working together was important.
Yeah, just the Runnymede Trust was spectacular for being a home and having done lots of work around education and diverse histories and so on in the past. But especially wonderful as a knowledge partner, I suppose, in the area of dissemination. So we did a launch, we did a big launch for the project at the BBC, which was done in part because of Runnymede's networks. We then did a sort of follow-on project built on our migration story, sort of training teachers to teach migration, which was launched in the House of Commons, which happened solely because of the Runnymede Trust, and then we were able to get MPs on side and thinking about how this alterations to curriculum might be implemented off the back of the sort of thinking that our migration story was evidencing. I think certainly in my experience as an academic working with folks who are based in universities, often there are really fantastic projects that are done to look into the archives and get information that people might not otherwise have, or pull together academic research that had been done in the past that would be of value to a public. But those projects don't necessarily then have a plan for dissemination. And I think, one of the lucky things, I suppose, about our migration story is that very early on, the question was raised of how will we get this into the hands of the people who need it. And then we were able to plan quite a thorough, which ended up being about an 18-month dissemination plan to get it to all the constituencies who might find it of value. And I think that was one of the greatest things about the collaborations we had.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your experiences, and especially all of these really rich reflections on the value of public history and putting research into dialogue with the public. Thank you so much for being here.